Today, I'd like to tell you a bit about the work we did on our working party. Our group was set up last year in the European Parliament in the Petitions Committee, and I had the honour of chairing that group. Now, it was a working party that looked at this issue. We were looking at child welfare issues, and we focused in particular on the Jugendamt. This working party worked from October 2015 to March 2017, and we had one member from each group in it. And we looked at the large number of petitions that the committee received covering these problems. We looked at the fact that this was a problem with the system. We weren't talking about individual cases, we were talking about a problem with a system. And we realized that these cases were cross-border cases, and they had a negative impact on the protection that should be provided at European level. So we had this working party, and we looked at the welfare of children. We were looking at the fundamental rights in the European Union. They are listed in Article 24 in particular. We also looked at a few other issues as well. We looked at the ban on discrimination, we looked at equality, and we looked at the right to recourse to an impartial judge. We also looked at protection for private and family life. So those were the main issues we covered in our working party. Now, as I said, we had many petitions that came in over the years, and they showed how serious the cases were, especially when it came to the Jugendamt and the German system in general. Now, we've heard about this. The German system for family law does give rise to concern in general. And I would just like to repeat and clarify that despite invitations from our committee, from our working party, the German authorities, well, they have been invited several times, but despite those invitations, they never accepted our invitations to attend our working party meetings. We looked at Germany, and we noticed that it has a single, unique legal system that you don't have in any other EU countries. It has a few very specific characteristics that don't have any equivalents in other European legal systems. And that's something that struck us. Another thing that struck us was the fact that there isn't much data. We don't have much information. We were very surprised to find out that statistics for court cases for minors and family disputes that involve non-German parents, well, we were surprised to find that there was no data on that at all. And then secondly, we discovered that there weren't any statistics on the number of cases where the judge just didn't really look at the recommendations made by the Jugendamt. We don't have any information on that at all. We asked for this information. We asked for that information several times. We asked for statistics. We asked them to send us that information. Well, that's not that the German authorities couldn't realize that this might be important information. This system has been criticized for many years. It's been criticized by non-German citizens for many years now. In Germany, in these kinds of disputes, the custody is systematically given to the non-German parent. and the child is supposed to remain permanently in Germany. We've heard that from many families. And this even happens when there have been cases of domestic abuse. And so you may have a parent leaving Germany because the only way they can get away from that abuse is to leave the country. So we had 2 fact-finding missions. We had one in March 2007 and we had one in 2011 as well. We visited Berlin. And as you heard earlier, we've received around 300 petitions. And there's one thing I'd like to point out here. The first one came in 2007, so that's more than 10 years ago. Now, one thing that we have seen recently is that in our committee there are new petitions that come in, and they clearly use the word Jugendamt in the title. And that's something that you should remember. In the past, that word wasn't used, but now we're getting a very clear idea of what the petitions are when they come into the Parliament. So we've had more than 300 petitions. They're just indicators of what's happening. We think that the problem is much more serious at European level, actually. These petitions show that the situation is very difficult. We have a specific legal context here, and our expert Marinella Colombo will tell us more about that. She has supported our work. She's at our meeting today, and she unfortunately is also a victim of the German system as well, herself. And there are a few other points I want to mention. I want to talk about the central role played by the Jugendamt. It's a body, it's an institution, and it's always a party to these cases. It's a kind of third parent, if you like, when you have these cases with minors. And it provides recommendations to the judge that are basically binding. The Jugendamt can pass on its recommendations to the judge, and that's a point I want to make here. This is something that only exists in the German system. The Jugendamt also decides on temporary measures that are taken before the final legal decision is implemented. And the Jugendamt also implements these legal decisions handed down by the court. So, it clearly has a very key role to play here. And that's something that needs to be looked at very carefully. And one thing that we also discovered during our work is that there is what they call the Verfahrensbeistand in German. And they are supposed to be defending the minor. But in practice, you could actually say they are representing the interests of the German state. That's what happens in practice. And that actually contradicts the need to, above all, protect the interests of the minor concerned. Then there's the point about Kindeswohl in German, and that has a lot of economic and social implications. And then another point that we covered in our working party, and this is something that was mentioned by other colleagues, this concerns the hearing of the minors. Now that happens without the presence of the minors or other legal representatives. It's not recorded either. The only thing that comes out of that hearing is a brief summary of what happened during the hearing of the child. So, these are systems that are mentioned in the petitions. This is what we looked at in our working party. And we're talking about periods of years here where the non-German parents don't have any contact with their children. And this happens with the support of the German authorities. And basically, the non-German parents are criminalized in this system. We came up with 38 recommendations, and unfortunately, nothing has been done with those recommendations yet. There are inherent problems in the German system. They have not been changed, and there are petitions that still continue to come in from citizens across Europe. And then I'd just like to conclude by commenting on the role of the European Commission. This is something colleagues have also mentioned. Despite this being a very serious situation, the Commission continues to take a standard official position, and it's not intervening. And this is something I'd really like to say. It's very absurd. The same European Commission has been making changes in Brussels 2A. And under that, decisions are supposed to circulate quicker around Europe. But that's very controversial, because what's happening is that the decisions taken in Germany will then be sent around the rest of Europe, and these are decisions that are not fair decisions. So, we want to defend these people at political level. We want to support them. They are victims of this system. These bodies are discriminating against certain people. And this needs to be addressed if we want to create a European community and European people who can live in harmony. People should not be discriminated against. We should not be putting our children at risk. Thank you.